I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our daily lives. And for the benefit of the listening audience out there tonight, it is August the 27th, 2017, and we are live this evening due to many difficulties, both technical and personal, over the last 3 weeks. As you know, you have been treated to a rebroadcast of an earlier program, but we are live tonight. It is August 27th, 2017, and we are live. And if you want to join the conversation tonight, the numbers to call are either 718-717-8296 or 501-258-8326. If you have trouble with that first number, you can call the second. So either 718-717-829, 718-717-8296 or area code 501-258-8326. And you'll be on the air, and you can put your 2 cents in. You can ask a question if you like. We've been talking about narcissism for the past couple of weeks, and we're going to continue that discussion tonight. The reason we spent so much time on this topic is because narcissism is such a common feature today. And there's been a lot of talk about our president in the media and whether or not he has a narcissistic personality disorder. And breaking with a little convention, we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail tonight. Some interesting things happened when I was doing some workshops this past couple of weeks. Just came back from the New York area where I did 2 weeks worth of workshopping. It was a really interesting experience. We had very high attendance, and we really had an interesting cross-section of individuals with some very strong but very different opinions, very differing opinions about the political climate of our times and what character disturbance has to do with that, especially what narcissism has to do with it. And so you may have some opinions about that yourself. You may want to share them. You may also have some questions or comments about some of the articles that have been appearing on the blog at www.drgeorgesimon.com or www.manipulative-people.com. I've had a couple of articles posted recently that have gotten a lot of action. You might want to ask some questions about that. Or you may just have a situation you want to talk about or some thoughts you want to share. In any case, feel free to give us a call at 718-717-8296 or 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, interesting little article in the USA Today last week that I just happened to come across when I was preparing for my workshop on a Thursday, and it was real interesting. There was some question raised once again about the president's mental fitness for service. Several things that happened. There were some firings. There was the events in Charlottesville that had a lot of people upset because of the nature of the president's response. People upset on both sides of the issue. There was also some concern over some firings that took place. In any case, once again, the issue was raised of the president's mental health. So then I come across, as I'm preparing to do my workshop, I come across an article in the USA Today where some senators are quoted as Jane O'Donnell is the author of this article that appeared in USA Today on Thursday, the 24th of August. Several senators, including Bob Corker of Tennessee, and then some other top advisors and former advisors, James Clapper, noteworthy among them, a top intelligence official during the George W. Bush administration and Obama administration. Several folks questioning the mental fitness of the president and expressing concern about his stability, especially in view of all of the saber rattling going on with North Korea. And so once again, the whole issue of narcissistic personality disorder was raised and whether or not the president suffers from it. And I'm reading this article, and I hear from these supposed experts in various parts of the country. You know, we have long had in the mental health professions an ethical code, a caveat called the Goldwater Rule, which means you basically, and this was developed. This ethical principle was developed during the time when many psychiatrists and psychologists were questioning the mental fitness of Barry Goldwater, when they didn't in fact know the man. Frankly, I lived in Arizona at the time that Barry was running, and he was actually quite a remarkable man. Run into him a couple of times, and not in the least the person that many had painted him to be in the heat of the election campaign. A conservative through and through, no question about it, a staunch conservative. But a true nutcase, no. So radical that he would, as many ads at the time were suggesting, take us into a nuclear war unreservedly because of his mental instability. Never would happen. But during that time, this rule was adopted that we would not ever confer a diagnosis on someone from a remote distance without having firsthand knowledge, without having performed a firsthand evaluation. Well, a lot of people feel entitled to violate that rule uh, because of the consistency and the audaciousness and the openness with which our president demonstrates basically his personality traits. He's not ashamed of them. He's not uh, embarrassed by them. Uh, we call this professionally egosyntonia. It means that the person is comfortable with the traits that they display because they're compatible with the image they want to hold of themselves. So, with individuals who are, for a lack of a better term, as we commonly say in psychiatry and psychology, with individuals who are to some extent neurotic, the ways that they cope and the features of personality that they show are sometimes, oftentimes, incompatible with the image that they want to have of themselves. We call this ego dystonia. And so they will come into a therapist's office and say such things like, I know I have something really valuable to say to people. I know my field of expertise, and I have a good deal of experience, but yet when I get up to speak in front of a group of people, I get tongue-tied, I get uh, weak-kneed, I perspire heavily, I even feel like I want to run out of the room. And I don't like that about myself. That's not the person that I want to be. I want to have a different attitude about things. I want to speak with confidence. I want to be able to have conviction and a sense of uh, self assuredness when I share my knowledge. That's the kind of person that I want to be. I don't want to be this anxious wreck. And I think we're back on the air. At least I hope we are. And I apologize for the inconvenience of lost signal. Once again, unfortunately, we had some technical problems in New York and a loss of signal for about 20 minutes. No, maybe a little less than that, maybe about 15 minutes. I am so sorry. Once again, you're listening to Character Matters with Dr. George Simon. Boy, it seems like a little bit of a hassle these days to do a live program, but we're here. It's August 27th, 2017, and we are live and hopefully able to take your calls at either 718-717-8296 or 501-258-8326. Once again, you're on Character Matters. And sorry about the technical glitches that we have been having for the past several weeks. We also have had some glitches with people being able to call in on the phone lines, but I actually believe that has been successfully repaired. So we'll give it a shot once again. I was talking earlier about the Goldwater rule and why psychologists and psychiatrists and other mental health professionals are not supposed to confer diagnoses on people who they have never really formally evaluated. And I was saying that some folks are feeling entitled to make an exception to this rule because some of the aspects of the president's behavior are so obvious and so out in the open, and so telltale in many respects, that some folks feel the right to violate this rule. I am not one of those folks. I was egregiously misquoted in the Psychology Today article, in the Atlantic article, the Vanity Fair article. These programs, these magazines and features all had a similar source. The same source fed these news outlets. And I was actually very careful not to go on record as saying that our president had a narcissistic personality disorder. That would be an egregious it would be an egregious violation of ethical standards, in my book, in my opinion. And I also made the point, interestingly enough, with the reporters interviewing me, I made the point that by definition, by traditionally accepted definitions, it would be hard to make the case. And in this article in USA Today, last Thursday, the 24th of August, two touted mental health professionals argued the same sides of the issue. So I wanted to read to you this article that appeared in USA Today, and it was written. This was on the 24th, Thursday, the 24th of August, by Jane O'Donnell. Front page article: Talk of Trump's mental health spreads. And subtitle: Psychiatrists abuzz about Trump's mental fitness. So the one psychiatrist, Mandy Lee, consulting with Democratic members of Congress and other psychiatrists, urged setting up an expert panel to advise Congress about Trump's mental health. Lee, who said she spoke out because of the president's, quote, dangerousness, and who edited the upcoming book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, to which 27 other mental health professionals contributed, made this statement, and this really shows how individuals, even professionals, lacking in awareness of the current state of the art, lacking in awareness of the current research literature, and just lacking in general in the kind of experience and knowledge that really is necessary these days to do a sound job of assessment. Here's what she has to say, and I quote, "Narcissistic personality disorder describes a debilitating need to project grandiosity so as to fight the inner feelings of low self-worth. In extreme forms, narcissistic personality disorder is one of the disorders most associated with violence and is sometimes considered to be on the same spectrum as antisocial personality disorder or sociopathy." Well, I've written many articles on this. First of all, Bandy is egregiously in error by omission of the fact that while it is true that there is a form of narcissism, and I write about this on my blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com, and I write about it in all four of my books: Character Disturbance, In Sheep's Clothing, The Judas Syndrome, and How Did We End Up Here? You can read about it in all that material and in the many articles on the blog. But there is, in fact, a form of narcissism that is compensatory, as we say. In other words, the person underneath it all is very insecure, has a low self-esteem, a poor sense of self-worth, and has developed a persona unconsciously built on a mound of defenses that covers or compensates for this inner feeling of insecurity and low self-worth. There is a form of narcissism like that. But to assume in our day and time that all narcissism has its roots in that is not only incorrect, but reflects a lack of awareness on the professional's part asserting such things, and also reflects a certain amount of dangerous, because in our day and time, it's dangerous to even think that way. There are some narcissistically inclined individuals who truly do believe they are all that, and it is not a compensation for anything. There are no inner feelings of insecurity, vulnerability, and low self-worth. There is only this inflation that has been there forever, a sense of entitlement, a sense of specialness, a sense of special status, a sense of superiority, of being better than other people, and holding everyone else in the world in complete and utter disdain. There is another form of narcissism, and this psychiatrist contributing to this article is clearly unaware of that, and is clearly making an assessment here that is dangerous to make. And the point, too, about narcissism in its extreme form being associated with violence, I talk about this in my books, and I talk about it in all my workshops. I was just talking about it in my last workshop tour. There is a form of narcissism called malignant narcissism. What makes narcissism malignant? Well, what makes narcissism malignant or particularly virulent is when a sense of shame and the capacity for empathy are so lacking. Either the person innately lacks the capacity, especially for empathy, that, or they have the incredible ability, as we say in the business, to compartmentalize empathy, which means wall it off mentally, to put it in kind of a mental lockbox, to turn it off like a light switch, to turn off all feelings, especially when they're in the mode of behavior where they're goal-oriented, they have a goal in mind, and because others might get hurt in the process, and because they want to win so desperately or get what they want so desperately that they can't let themselves care, they can turn it off. They can turn off all caring that they might have. So with sociopathy or psychopathy, there is this capacity many times with this most malignant form of narcissism to either wall off empathy or shame, or the person simply lacks it because they just don't have enough conscience development to have empathy and to have shame. And so they behave shamelessly. Nothing they do that offends other people seems to bother them. They don't feel shame. They don't sense shame. And because they lack genuine caring, when they hurt other people, or especially when they hurt other people's feelings, they do it without compunction, without hesitation. It doesn't unnerve them. It doesn't bother them. And so that form of narcissism is truly malignant, and it is associated with another type of narcissist that is not compensatory. It's associated with a type of narcissism that we call the grandiose narcissist. And this narcissist does not have any underlying feelings of low self-worth. This is a person who just flat out thinks too much of themselves. And any lack of genuine, authentic, or deserved self-regard stems from their overestimation about their worth. They just chronically overvalue themselves. And that's because, as I write about in my books, they cannot even conceive of, in their mental framework, in their mind, they can't even conceive of, let alone subordinate themselves to, a higher power. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about God. I'm talking about any greater reality, any higher operating principle, whether it be the general social good, the prosperity and survival of the human race, the care of the earth, any higher power, any higher purpose, because it's all about them. That's all that matters, and their own greatness and their own glory. And that's the grandiose narcissist. It's not, I say this a rhyming phrase in my workshops. It's not that they're not aware of what they do. They're very aware. The problem is they don't care. In my workshops, I always, the one thing that the articles in Psychology Today and the Atlantic and Vanity Fair and those other publications in the New Yorker, the one thing those articles got correct is, even though I would not violate ethical canons and say that our president had a narcissistic personality disorder, I did say that the narcissistic features in his personality were so classic and so obvious that I did include him in my archive. I did include videos of many of his appearances in my archive of videos that I use to illustrate certain personality features when I do my workshops. And there were a couple of things that just stand out. And to illustrate the point of what I'm saying here when I say these folks are aware, but they just don't care. And that's the heart of the problem. They lack the capacity to genuinely care. They know how to feign it. They know how to act like they care. And when it suits them, for practical purposes, they can act like they care, but they don't really care. They can only really care about themselves and their own self-interest. They don't really have proper regard for others. It's pretty sad. So I say they're aware, but they don't care. And one of the examples that I thought really demonstrated that was the appearance that candidate Trump made at the Al Smith charity dinner, along with candidate Clinton during the election cycle. During the months running up to the election, this is an annual event, and it's very traditional for the leading candidates to attend this dinner and then to get up and speak and to toss barbs at one another. This is to be expected. But there are certain unwritten rules about human decency that even folks in the heat of intense political battle know it is well worth their while to observe so that they don't come across as brutes or insensitive, because we don't need that in a president. But at this dinner, Hillary got up and she tossed some of her barbs, and they were pretty darn funny. And then Donald got up and he spoke, and he tossed a few of his barbs, and they were funny too. But then something very, very different happened. And you could see it happening, and it was clear to not only anybody watching on TV or listening on the radio, but it was very, very clear to those attending. He started getting into territory and displaying a level of boorishness, vulgarity, and brashness, and harshness, and meanness that almost everybody began to take offense to. And it was a very painful thing to watch. And so what you found yourself saying as you watched him launch barb after barb after barb of a very different character from the barbs that had been funny, moving into attacks that were just basically too brutal. And as that was happening, you would say to yourself, does he not see? Does he not see that this is not going over very well? Some people got very, very quiet. You know, they had been laughing, and then the room started to get very quiet. And then there were some hisses and boos. And then there were people walking out. And this man was not fazed by any of this. He felt perfectly entitled to keep going. And it's not that he wasn't aware. This is what I say in my workshops all the time. This is how I try to inform the attendees. The problem is not whether he's aware. The problem is the extent that he cares. And some people have a diminished capacity to care. That's the defining characteristic of the type of narcissism that they have. So I use that as an example. So the articles in those periodicals got that part right, at least. I do have those videos in my archive, and they are illustrative. They are very illustrative of this kind of narcissism. And so I wanted to dispel some notions tonight, and I wanted to speak out just a little bit more strongly. Because we have, as a group of sciences and arts, the mental health profession, psychiatry, psychology, we have a long way to go. First of all, we don't know anywhere near as much as we think we know. There's plenty of narcissism in the mental health field. For as long as I've been doing this, and as accomplished as I like to think that I am, and as well versed as I like to think that I am, as well educated, and as experienced as I like to think I am, because your greatest teachers are the people that you work with. And I've worked with several hundred folks, helping them to grow and find more joy and fulfillment in their lives, and helping them function more adaptively in their relationships. And I think I've learned a few things along the way. But if you ever lose that humility, you ever lose that sense that you really don't know as much as you think you do, and there's always more to learn, then you've got trouble. And in the mental health profession today, quite frankly, we have far too many professionals among us who think they're all that and think they know all that. So when people get up and make these pronouncements, like I read in the USA Today, it just makes me cringe just a little bit. Makes me cringe. Now, there is no question that our president has a certain personality. By definition, by the definitions that we have long held, and that's the one thing that this one psychiatrist actually got right here. Let me see his name here. Alan Francis, who conceived the diagnostic definition of narcissistic personality disorder, has his own book, The Twilight of American Sanity. A psychiatrist analyzes the age of Trump. He said that he doesn't think that you can say that our president has a narcissistic personality disorder because, by definition, it doesn't meet the criteria. This is the exact point that I made to the interviewers that sourced the Psychology Today article, the Vanity Fair article, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't meet the definition. It doesn't meet the criteria because, quote, it hasn't caused him distress or impairment in his ability to function in the world. And he also said, besides, it's really the voters that have the final word. And so that's my stance on it. There isn't any question that the president has a personality. We all do. And it's not rocket science. You don't have to have a PhD in clinical psychology. You don't have to have an MD in psychiatry. You don't have to have a degree in rocket science to see the narcissistic features in his personality. That's kind of a duh moment right there. However, his way, we define personality by the characteristic way the person approaches daily life. The way they see things, the way they do things, the way they view the world and tend to want to interact with the world, and the way they view other people and tend to want to interact with other people. It's a style of relating. That's what defines personality. And that moral aspect of a person's style of relating is what defines their character. And you would have to agree that our president's way of doing things has certainly got him places and made him billions also in the process. So our classic definitions don't hold up. The very definitions that we have made about what constitutes a personality disorder, it doesn't meet the criteria. So these folks trying to be sensationalistic, they need to check what they're saying. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that we're not facing a situation here that is really pretty significant. And that is that we have an individual who we've elected to lead us, who has a certain temperament, who has a certain style of relating that most people find offensive. And frankly, this is how the profession will eventually redefine what inherently constitutes a personality disorder. What will constitute a disorder like this in the future is how it impairs a person's ability to achieve genuine intimacy. Genuine intimacy and wholesomeness and caring, true love within a relationship. That's how we will define it. And, you know, the fact is, all you have to do is look around at all the bodies already that have been tossed out, run over, discarded, and all the hateful speak. It's all about self-aggrandizement and loyalty. If you honor and adore, you're in. If you don't, and if you don't make the person look good, or if you're critical, or you disagree, or you don't adulate, or you advise in a way that makes the person look bad, you're out. It's just that simple. I have no use for you because, after all, it's all about me and how I look. It's all about my aggrandizement. Now, that part I'm not afraid to say. And there is danger there. There is danger there. But I'm not going to go so far as all these other folks have gone. Ultimately, it's the people's choice. It's the people's choice, as always, to examine, and it's the people's responsibility to examine the character of the persons that they put in charge of leading them. We have a representative government. We choose people to represent our interests. We put them in power and we can take them out of power. That's the great, great founding principle of this republic. And as you'll hear in the song that closes and opens this program, America, My Home, that's the sentiment there. That's the sentiment that my wife and I wanted to express when we composed this piece so many years ago. So I'll see you next week on another edition of Character Matters. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. George Simon. Sorry about the snap.
America.